Want to sharpen your game? Join the DFM Coaching Patreon for exclusive technique breakdowns and mindset training. Now, let's get started.
Welcome to Tap Day. My name is David Figueroa-Martinez, and today we're going to be discussing the benefit of remote coaching for the hobbyist. For so often, much of my career, I have never really seen a whole lot of remote coaching or additional coaching available for students in general. I think in the last, probably right around the pandemic or just before it, I started to see more of it and the availability and the structure and how it could benefit athletes in general. And it's not necessarily completely taken off because I think we have a lot of old school views of what that looks like or what it is specifically in this dynamic. But when you think about it, every major sport has some kind of additional coaching. Every major sport has something where coaching and improvement doesn't come from one person, and that being your head instructor, for example. And you look at sports teams, they all have nutritionists, strength and conditioning, they got psychology, they have offensive and defensive coordinators and specific coaching for wide receivers and quarterbacks and so on, because one person cannot do it all. And we can benefit you in a lot of different ways. We can give you a wealth of knowledge. But when we're really honest about it, there's aspects of my game that don't translate well to a specific student. Overall, I can teach you, I can make you better. But if you're looking for something very specific, like maybe you're a leg locker or primarily a no-gi guy, and I have a decent no-gi game, but like I'm not a specialist in it. I'm not a specialist in leg locks, for example. So for a student or athlete, regardless of whether you are a pro level or hobbyist, getting some kind of additional resources is not a bad thing. And I think that the culture and the sport need to continue to grow to the point where we think of it as a normal act. The same way we think of doing private lessons. It's just part of the process. Specifically, if you have really specific questions or you want to develop a certain way at a certain pace, those things are great. Private lessons are a fantastic tool. And specifically, if you're going to take notes and take it seriously and maybe record aspects of it so that you can refer back to it, that relationship between a coach and a student is greatly benefited when you can have that dedicated one-on-one time. The same, I would say, you could be said for remote coaching. And we sometimes think that that's a pro level add-on that we need to get into. And sometimes we also think that way about private lessons as well, because it's not cheap. So when I think about like that remote coaching aspect, the reason that it really matters for me, specifically for hobbyists, is that we are so limited on time. We're limited on how much time we have on the mats, and our bandwidth is not infinite like it might be for a pro athlete who gets to focus specifically on this job or this task. We have our 9 to 5, which might be 40 hours. It might be 50, 60 hours a week, depending on what your job is. You might have a job that doesn't allow you to be necessarily consistent throughout the week. You might be out of town one week, and yes, you might drop in at a couple of gyms while you're out of town, but it's inconsistent in what you're training. It's inconsistent in maybe the amount of times between training. Travel can get to you. Like people end up coming back sick, or like there's a whole host of things that will prevent us from really dedicating the way we would like. So we have to maximize the hours that we have available in order to achieve certain goals. If your goal isn't specific to, hey, I want to get better at this within this time, or I want to get my black belt by time I'm 40, or any of the other goals, then you can easily just keep going the way you're going. There isn't an issue whatsoever. But if you feel like, hey, I want to get a little bit better faster, I want to get better at this specific skill faster, I want to be able to demonstrate that I can defend myself from bottom better. And you may need to certain people's brains so that you can adapt your process a little better and more focused. And remote coaching is a great way of doing that. There's a whole bunch of different services out there, me included. I do one as well. And it's really for those people who have limited time, inconsistent focus during the week. I'm shocked sometimes by how often I find that students have zero goals when they get on the mat. Again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that as long as you understand that your advancement is going to be slower. You're coming in just to have a good time. That's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. But if you're trying to actively get better and you're coming in 3 days a week, and so that's maybe an hour a class, hour and a half, you're limited on time. So if you come in and your thought process is you're just going to wing it, it's not going to work as well for you. So the remote coaching kind of allows you to understand what maybe you should be focusing on so that you don't waste as much time when you're rolling or when you're asking questions or when you're spending time at open mat. It's a little bit more focused. It allows you to really see what you should be doing opposed to just feeling everything out. What coaching is going to look like and be different from each student, but for the most part, it's going to be a clear training focus. Instead of learning everything, we're going to get you to focus on what really matters specifically to you. If you're a new student and you find yourself on your back and you're never escaping, that's what we're going to focus on. We're not going to be focusing on the submission attacks. There's zero point in focusing on that or making that a goal if you can't get out of side control, you can't get out of mount, can't get out of north-south. So it gets very focused to exactly what your biggest pain points are. We start asking questions about what positions do you find yourself in most? We talk about who exactly puts you in those positions. Sometimes it's just over, like the darker belt students. Sometimes it's everyone. Sometimes it's specific to maybe you have an athlete that's just so much faster and younger than you that they are able to be more athletic. So then we focus on how to neutralize some of that athleticism and then build up from there. You start asking, maybe, what do you think your biggest mistakes are that you repeat often? We can start focusing from there. And sometimes students don't even understand what the mistakes are. They're just going and they understand that they're losing the round habitually, but they don't quite understand what exactly is leading to that. So having someone to actually walk you through analyzing and focusing and seeing things for what they are lets you then narrow down, okay, so I keep doing this. My guard retention is terrible. Maybe I'm not using my feet well enough. And that'll come from one of the things that I'm going to discuss next, which is video review. I came up when YouTube was big. I recorded a lot of my rounds from blue all the way to black. I haven't recorded a round in a while, but I can look back at everything that I was doing, and I used to look back and I could see the mistakes I was making that I wasn't aware of at the time, but I did not have someone reviewing the footage. Having a higher belt reviewing that footage is massive, and it doesn't matter if I'm in the room with you or across the world. I get that video. I can give you analysis, breakdown, your top 3 things that you probably should be focusing on. And then you go with that game plan and start focusing on the positions that you're finding yourself in. You start asking questions of yourself. What is my opponent trying to do? And why are they successful here? And then we can sit down, or I can do it on my own across the world again and give you markings and visual aid. You're doing this or you're doing that. You're not doing these key things. I genuinely wish I had that coming up. It would have been such a helpful guide. It would have cut quite a bit of my training and my trial and error period out, because I would have had someone be able to give me this video of a breakdown of my most common mistakes, and I could have intentionally started fixing them. Oftentimes we sit there and the same thing happens 3, 4, 5 times. And if you're not necessarily analytical, maybe you're a bit more emotional, you're frustrated with the result. but you haven't opened your eyes enough to see, oh, I'm making these mistakes because of this. My foot just wasn't in position. And then once you can clarify that one thing, oftentimes the equation changes and things start changing for you. But you don't see it unless you're visually able to see it, which that's where those video reviews come in so handy. The other thing that we can help you on is game plan development. Again, I get shocked by how many people I'll ask. They have zero game plan. They have never even thought of a game plan. My brain is very analytical and it's very like flowcharty. If they do this, I do that. Once I do this, if they do that, I do this. And I just work myself through the flowchart of potential attacks that I have. And I just play through it. Again, I'm at a black belt level. I hit 5 years in June, this coming June. So I have a lot of practice and I have a lot of muscle memory built in. And I've seen the movie quite a bit. But that's kind of how game plans sort of work. If you're someone who you want to do DARS, head and arm type chokes, someone does the underhook from bottom of a half guard. They start working their way up. You can start working DARS attacks or anaconda attacks or guillotine attacks based on their movement and your body positioning. When you throw up one submission, they may respond and they may respond with something that doesn't benefit them at all, and you get the sub and you win. You won the round. More often than not, they're going to start defending a certain way. Maybe they start pulling back. Maybe they start flattening out. Maybe their response allows you to then half pass the guard. That's one checkpoint. And then once you pass, you start solidifying whatever your desired choke is, and maybe they start to stand up. That's another checkpoint. Now you have to address that response. So, but this is how we start building a game, is understanding what kind of positions do we like? What kind of positions do we end up in most often? And then how do I adapt my most interesting or favorable attacks and then start whittling down what the most common responses are? We have to set up game plans. We have to set up things that we like and don't like and things that we're going to focus on and ways that we're going to like funnel the action. If you don't have an overall game plan, it doesn't have to be super detailed. You're just sort of running around and everything's possible. No one's possible and everything's possible at the same time. And you just don't have any focus. So your job is to start setting up game plans. And a lot of students need help with this. This is something we can help you with. It doesn't have to be super complex. It can be A, B, A, B, A, B. And then as you feel more comfortable with it, it becomes more complex because then you start plugging in techniques at each checkpoint that you encounter. And then you start having fun with it. My game is not super intricate, in my opinion. It's not the most athletic. It's not the most unique necessarily. There isn't a whole lot of flashiness to it, but I know it through and through. I know that when someone does this, my butterfly hook is going to come into the spot. I know when they do this, I'm going to go 2-on-1. When they try to defend in 2-on-1, I'm going to start taking it back. When they pull back on the 2-on-1, I'm going John Wayne sweep. So like I have this game plan set. I don't have to think about it. I feel it and I start going. And you have to get that muscle memory through developing it and then the trial and error on the mats. But again, it's hard to come up with if you don't have a little bit of a guide. Maybe you start plugging in the wrong techniques that maybe require too much movement or too many transitions to get to, and they're not necessarily shared space. And that's where we can kind of help. We can start giving you ideas and say, hey, this week you're going to do this whenever you find yourself in this position. I want you to report back to me in a week. This is going to be your goal. And then report back to me. Tell me what were the top 2 to 3 responses. What gave you the biggest problems? And then I'm going to give you another technique to deal with that. And then another week, we're going to add. And in a couple of weeks, you have a game plan within that system and that specific position. Beautiful. We also want to do weekly and monthly structured check-ins and short-term, long-term goals. Every time you train doesn't have to be specific to your goal. You can work in, hey, if you train 3 times a week, on that last day, it might be an open mat. I just want you to play. Other times when we're trying to focus on something very specific, hey, let's make it a goal all 3 days that you're in there. And then you're going to be times where you're just going to find yourself in a position that maybe the people you rolled with one day never gave you that option. So it's going to be a secondary goal of, okay, you're on your back most of that day. You're going to work on escapes. So those weekly and monthly kind of keep you zoned in. They keep you focused on a specific task and sharpening that blade. So it doesn't feel like you're spending too much time in areas and spaces that maybe aren't beneficial for you. Again, when you get to a certain level, everything's available. But when you're here early on and you're on your back most of the time and you're trying to escape and survive, those are moments and times where you have to focus on very specific things so that the rest of the world kind of opens up to you. And reasons why I think this is perfect for the hobbyist. It improves the fewer rounds that you do have. In my opinion, it reduces frustration because you're getting feedback and you're having someone that you can discuss things with regularly, getting those ideas. Hey, you suggested the other day, I suggested something to someone and they implemented it during that class. I'm, as an instructor, I'm super proud, happy. And they come to me afterwards and say, oh man, that really worked. You get more of those moments. Not trial and error where I think this will work. Maybe that'll work. And then you start using it and it wasn't the right answer for the situation. Or maybe my application wasn't the right answer or the correct path. It reduces a lot of that frustration. You also get a little bit of like a big brother, big sister type of relationship where, hey, I'm frustrated because this is an escape happened to me. I didn't get promoted today. I feel like I'm in a plateau. I feel like I'm not making the gains that I really wish I would be doing. And then those conversations kind of help you quell a lot of your frustration because literally everyone's been through it. If you got into black belt, you've been through it multiple times. And sometimes those conversations of just saying, this is natural. You're going through it and you're going through it like everyone else has gone through it. And like everyone else will go through it. Your feelings are valid. There's nothing wrong with your approach right now. You just have to spend more time doing X, Y, Z. And it kind of reduces that frustration. It puts you in a better space mentally. It reduces burnout. Like that emotions of like putting yourself where you're trying to fix something. And every time you do something, it just gets worse or it never improves. It spurns you right into burnout because of all the frustration you're having. But if you had someone that you could discuss this with, and yes, your coach is a great resource. But sometimes that coach has 15, 20, 30, 50, 100 students. And to think that they're going to be able to do this for everyone is quite hard. So you get a remote coach. You get someone that you can bounce ideas off of. Someone that'll keep you structured, keep you balanced. It's beautiful. Like I wish it was something that I had coming up because it would have reduced a lot of my own frustrations and issues. Couple of common myths before I cut out. Remote coaching is not just for the pros at all. Can the pros get quite a bit out of this? Yes, but so can you. And it may or may not be as expensive you might think it is. And some businesses, hey, us getting together on a couple of questions and won't even be that expensive. Sometimes you can get into a community that maybe offers those things and the community might be free or at a low charge. And it's there as a resource to fill in some of the gaps that you kind of have in training. The idea that you need to be advanced first is silly. I think sometimes the ones who need it most are the new students because there's so many what ifs and unknowns that this can really fill in with some of that. And old school coaches might get offended, but I think it's beneficial to you and it's something within the culture that we need to get away with. And it's silly. I personally am not offended when my students go out to other places and they're getting coached by people. At the end of the day, I'm their primary coach. I do the promotions, I do whatnot, but I understand that I can't touch every base. And there's going to be times when you're going to get something from someone else that's going to really be helpful. As a coach, I'm incredibly happy. I want that to happen. So if you're interested in this or have any additional questions, please hit me up. Let me know. I do offer this service. I also have a free program on school that kind of touches on some of these things in a more laid back way, I guess. It's not defined to any one person, but it's a small group of people that can answer questions, and the technique and all of my recorded workshops are on there. Again, the program is free. If you're interested, hit the link in the show notes or do a search on school. Until next time, thank you so much.